I stood in the doorway of the banquet hall, watching Marcus slip the engagement ring onto her finger instead of mine. Again. The applause echoed through the room as Victoria beamed, her perfectly manicured hand extended for everyone to admire the 3-carat diamond that should have been mine. The same diamond I'd worn in my previous life. The same diamond I died still believing meant something. "I told you," Marcus's mother hissed in my ear, her breath reeking of champagne and malice. "You were never good enough for my son. You were just a placeholder until Victoria came back from Paris." I didn't flinch. Not this time. Because this time I'd known it was coming. This time I'd spent the last 6 months preparing for this exact moment. And this time I noticed something I'd been too heartbroken to see before. Marcus's father, Robert, standing alone by the terrace doors, his jaw tight with barely contained fury as he watched his son humiliate me in front of 200 guests. His eyes met mine across the room and I saw it again, that same desperate longing I'd been too blind to recognize in my first life, the same longing that had made him hold me as I died, whispering apologies I hadn't understood until I woke up 10 years younger, gasping in my childhood bedroom with a decade of memories burning in my mind like a brand. I smiled at Robert. Not the broken, pleading smile I'd given Marcus when he'd discarded me before. A knowing smile. A promise. Marcus thought he'd won. He had no idea the game had changed entirely. The memories of my previous life had crashed into me like a tidal wave on my 18th birthday. I'd woken up screaming, my mother rushing in to find me sobbing, reliving my death over and over. At 28, I'd discovered Marcus's affair with Victoria. At 29, I'd confronted him and he'd laughed in my face, told me I'd always been practice until Victoria finished her fashion degree abroad. At 30, I'd stood at the altar, abandoned. At 31, I'd driven my car off a bridge in a storm, too broken to care anymore. And as the water filled my lungs, Robert had somehow been there, diving in after me, pulling me out, holding me, begging me to stay. "I've loved you since the moment Marcus brought you home," he'd confessed as I died in his arms. "I've loved you, and I did nothing, and I'm so sorry." Then I was 18 again, with 10 years to change everything. The pattern had started when I was 19. Newly enrolled at the same university as Marcus. I'd met him at a charity gala my parents had dragged me to. My father's construction company did work for the Thornton Industries empire, making us wealthy but not Thornton wealthy. Marcus had been charming, attentive, everything a teenage girl dreamed of. He'd pursued me relentlessly, and I'd fallen hard. What I hadn't known then, what I only understood after Rebirth, was that Victoria had broken up with him 2 weeks before that gala, that I was a rebound, a convenient distraction from a good family that would make his parents happy while he waited for his true love to finish her degree in Paris. For 3 years, I'd been the perfect girlfriend. I'd learned to cook his favorite meals, rearranged my class schedule to match his, turned down internships to stay near him. I'd endured his mother Eleanor's cutting remarks about my provincial background and his sister Caroline's barely concealed disdain. The only Thornton who'd ever treated me with genuine warmth was Robert. Robert, who always remembered my birthday when Marcus forgot. Who asked about my classes and actually listened to the answers. Who defended me at family dinners when Eleanor made her snide comments. Who looked at me like I was something precious and rare, not a temporary convenience. I'd thought he was just being a good father-in-law to be. I'd been so naive. In my previous life, Victoria had returned from Paris the summer before Marcus and I were supposed to marry. Within a week, Marcus had started working late. Within a month, he'd stopped touching me. Within 3 months, he'd called off our engagement 2 days before the wedding, leaving me to face the humiliation alone while he and Victoria jetted off to the Maldives. I'd spiraled after that, lost my job due to the scandal. Eleanor had made sure every society matron in the city knew I'd driven her son away with my clinginess. My parents had been sympathetic but distant, absorbed in my younger brother's medical school graduation. I'd had no one, except Robert, who'd called every week to check on me, who'd offered me a position at Thornton Industries even after Marcus's betrayal, who'd sat with me through panic attacks and held my hand through therapy sessions, who'd loved me silently, honorably, never crossing a line even as I fell apart, until that last night when I'd finally seen the truth too late. This time, I woke up with all that knowledge burning in my mind. This time, I knew exactly what Marcus was, what his family was, and what I had to do. The first thing I did was protect myself. I didn't fall for Marcus's charm when he approached me at that same gala. I was polite, friendly, but distant. I watched his frustration grow as I refused to be captivated, refused to make it easy. But I accepted his invitation to dinner, and the next one, because I needed to get close to the family again. I needed to get close to Robert. Are you all right? Robert's voice pulled me from my memories. We were on the terrace now, away from the celebration of Marcus and Victoria's engagement. I'd excused myself from the party, and Robert had followed, just as I'd known he would. I should be devastated, I said quietly, looking out at the city lights. I should be crying, begging him to reconsider. Should be, Robert noted. But you're not. I turned to face him. God, he was handsome. I'd never really let myself see it before. 10 years older than Marcus. At 53, he had silver threading through his dark hair, lines around his eyes that spoke of wisdom and weariness, a solid presence that Marcus's flashy charm had always overshadowed. But now I saw him clearly. Saw the strength in his bearing, the intelligence in his sharp blue eyes, the barely restrained longing in the way he looked at me. I learned something important recently, I told him, about not wasting time on people who don't value you. His breath caught. Elena, did you mean it? I asked, stepping closer. What you said to me before? He went very still. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. I was close enough now to see his pulse hammering in his throat. You've been in love with me for years, haven't you? Since Marcus first brought me home. Maybe even before that. I remember seeing you at the university fundraiser, how you watched me during my speech about the literacy program. The color drained from his face. How did you— Tell me I'm wrong, I challenged. Tell me you don't think about me when you're alone. Tell me you didn't want to punch Marcus in the face tonight for humiliating me in front of everyone. Tell me your marriage to Eleanor is happy and fulfilling, and you don't spend every family dinner wishing you were anywhere else. Elena, this is— His voice was strained. You're upset. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking clearly for the first time in my life. I reached up and touched his face, felt him tremble. You're a good man, Robert. Too good for that family. Too good for a wife who despises you and a son who takes after her. You deserve someone who sees you, someone who appreciates you. You deserve better than— His hand came up to cover mine, his eyes anguished. You deserve someone your own age, someone who doesn't come with all this baggage, someone who— I deserve someone who loves me, I interrupted. Really loves me. Not someone who uses me as a placeholder. Not someone who sees me as a stepping stone or a disappointment. Someone who thinks I'm extraordinary just as I am. You are extraordinary, he breathed. You're the most extraordinary woman I've ever known. Elena, if you knew how many times I've dreamed of— He cut himself off, stepping back. No, this is wrong. You're hurt, and I won't take advantage. Then let me take advantage of you. I closed the distance again. Let me be selfish for once. Let me choose what I want instead of what everyone else expects. Elena, kiss me, I whispered. Just once. If there's nothing there, I'll never mention this again. But if there is— I looked up at him through my lashes. If there is, then maybe we both stop pretending we don't want this. For a long moment, he just stared at me, torn between desire and honor. Then, with a groan of surrender, he pulled me against him and kissed me. It was nothing like kissing Marcus had been. Marcus kissed like he was performing, like he was checking boxes, Robert. Kissed like he was dying and I was air, like he'd been starving for years and I was a feast. His hands cradled my face with a reverence that made my chest ache, and when we finally broke apart, we were both shaking. Christ, he whispered. Elena, we can't— We can, I said firmly. We absolutely can. You're going to divorce Eleanor, and then you're going to marry me. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Elena, think about what you're saying. The scandal— Will be spectacular, I agreed. And I don't care. Do you know what I learned recently, Robert? Life is too short to spend it being miserable because you're afraid of what people think. You're miserable with Eleanor. I would have been miserable with Marcus. Why shouldn't we be happy together? I'm 25 years older than you. 23? 93, I corrected. And I don't care about that either. I care that you're kind, that you're brilliant, that you actually see me as a person, not a trophy or a project. I care that when I talk, you listen, that you make me laugh, that you've defended me against your family 100 times when you could have just stayed silent. I took his hands in mine. I care that you love me. And I love you. You love Marcus, he said, but his voice was uncertain now. I loved the idea of Marcus, the fantasy of who I thought he was. I shook my head. But you, I know exactly who you are. I've watched you for years, Robert. I've seen how you treat people when you think no one's looking, how you tip service workers generously, how you mentor young employees, how you volunteer at the Children's Hospital every Saturday. I know you listen to jazz when you work late, that you read philosophy for fun, that you still handwrite thank you notes because you think it's more personal. I know you better than I ever knew Marcus. And I love you anyway. His eyes were bright with unshed tears. This will destroy so many things. Good, I said fiercely, but let it. That family has been toxic for too long. You've been playing the dutiful husband and father for decades while they treat you like a walking checkbook. Caroline barely speaks to you unless she needs money. Marcus thinks you're boring. Eleanor, I shook my head. Eleanor has been having an affair with her tennis instructor for 5 years. He blinked. What? I saw them, I said. It was true. In my previous life, I'd accidentally walked in on them at the country club. Ricardo, the pro from Argentina, every Tuesday and Thursday at the club, and sometimes at that boutique hotel downtown. I'm not telling you this to hurt you. I'm telling you because you deserve to know the truth. Your marriage is a sham, Robert. It has been for years. The only person who doesn't seem to know is you. He was silent for a long time, processing. Then, how long have you known? Does it matter? What matters is what we do now. I squeezed his hands. File for divorce. Move out. Start over. With me. Elena, even if I wanted to, and God help me, I do, I can't just, you can, I insisted. You're Robert Thornton. You built half this city. You're the one with the talent and the vision. Eleanor, Caroline, Marcus, they're passengers. They've been coasting on your success for years. You don't need them. You never did. He pulled me close again, his forehead resting against mine. If we do this, there's no going back. I don't want to go back, I told him. I only want to go forward, with you. Robert filed for divorce the next day. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. Eleanor screamed for 3 hours straight, alternating between denying the affair, blaming Robert for driving her to it, and threatening to take everything in the divorce. Caroline called me a gold-digging whore on social media before Robert's lawyer sent her a cease and desist. Marcus showed up at my apartment at 2 a.m, drunk and furious. How could you do this? He shouted through my door. He's my father. You're trying to ruin my family. I opened the door calmly. No, Marcus, I'm just refusing to be ruined by your family anymore. You can't actually want him, he spat. He's old, he's boring, he's everything you're not, I finished. Kind, honest, faithful, actually capable of love. I smiled sweetly. You chose Victoria, remember? You made it very clear that I was never going to be good enough for you. So I found someone who thinks I'm more than enough exactly as I am. You don't get to be angry about that. He's just having a midlife crisis, Marcus snarled. He'll realize what a mistake you are and come crawling back. Even if that were true, and it's not, why would you care? You have Victoria now, the love of your life. The woman you couldn't wait to throw me over for. Be happy with her and leave me alone. You're doing this to hurt me. Not everything is about you, I snapped, my patience finally breaking. For once in your narcissistic life, consider that maybe, just maybe, someone else's choices have nothing to do with you. I'm with Robert because I want to be, because he's a better man than you'll ever be, because he treats me like I matter. Now get out of my building before I call security. He left, but not before punching a hole in the hallway wall. The society pages were brutal. Headlines screamed about the shocking age gap scandal and the son's ex who became his stepmother. I got vicious messages from strangers daily. But I also got messages of support from other women who'd been discarded by powerful men, from people who knew the Thornton family's true colors, from Robert's employees who were thrilled to see him finally stand up to Eleanor. And through it all, Robert was steadfast. He moved into a penthouse downtown, and I spent every evening there with him. We cooked dinner together. He was a surprisingly good chef. We watched old movies and talked for hours about everything and nothing. We made love slowly, thoroughly, like people who'd waited years for permission to touch each other. And sometimes I caught him just watching me with this expression of wonder, like he couldn't believe I was real. "What are you thinking?" I asked one night, curled up against him on the couch. "That I'm the luckiest man alive," he said simply, "and that I don't deserve you." "You deserve everything," I told him fiercely. "You deserve to be happy, to be loved, to be with someone who's excited to see you, not someone who flinches when you walk into a room." He kissed my forehead. "I keep waiting to wake up and find this is a dream." "It's not a dream," I promised. "It's just the beginning." 3 months later, we got married in a small ceremony at a courthouse with my parents and Robert's closest friend as witnesses. No big wedding, no society spectacle. Just us, promising to love and cherish each other. When we left the courthouse as husband and wife, there were paparazzi waiting. I expected Robert to be tense, worried about the headlines. Instead, he pulled me into a deep kiss right there on the steps, making it abundantly clear that he wasn't ashamed of me or our marriage. The photo made the front page of every society magazine, and I looked radiant. The real revenge, though, came slowly and deliciously over the following year. Robert had always been the brains behind Thornton Industries, but Eleanor had controlled the social aspects, the charity boards, the society connections, the family image. When he divorced her, she'd assumed she'd retain that power. She was wrong. The society matrons who'd once fawned over Eleanor quickly pivoted when they realized Robert was the one with the real power and the money. And that I, as his wife, now controlled access to the Thornton name and fortune. Suddenly, the same women who'd whispered about me were sending lunch invitations and asking me to join their charity boards. I accepted selectively, choosing causes I actually cared about: literacy programs, women's shelters, scholarship funds for underprivileged students. I used the Thornton influence to do real good, not just throw lavish fundraisers where rich people congratulated themselves for writing checks. Eleanor, meanwhile, watched her social standing crumble. Her affair with Ricardo became public knowledge. I may have let that information slip to a particularly gossipy socialite at a charity luncheon. The man had been using her for money and connections, and when those dried up post-divorce, he dumped her for a wealthier mark. She tried to maintain her position on various boards, but one by one, they gently suggested she step down. After all, scandal was one thing, but being publicly humiliated and abandoned? That was too much for the delicate sensibilities of the upper crust. Caroline fared no better. She'd been living off a trust fund Robert had established, using it to fund her artistic endeavors, which mostly consisted of expensive trips to Europe where she took mediocre photographs. When Robert restructured his finances after the divorce, he put conditions on her trust. She had to actually work, had to show proof of employment and responsible behavior, or the fund would be frozen. She lasted 2 months at a gallery before getting fired for showing up late constantly. She tried to complain to Robert, and he told her calmly that actions had consequences. The trust fund remained frozen. Last I heard, she was living in a studio apartment in Queens, working retail. But Marcus was the true masterpiece of karma. Victoria, it turned out, hadn't just returned from Paris with a fashion degree. She'd returned with significant debt from her lavish lifestyle abroad and an expectation that Marcus would provide the wealth and status she craved. She'd chosen him over various European suitors, specifically because he was the Thornton heir. Except Robert had restructured that too. In the divorce settlement, Eleanor got a substantial amount of money. Robert was generous, even in separation, but the company remained entirely under Robert's control. And Robert, after years of watching Marcus coast by on the family name without actually contributing anything of value, made an announcement. Marcus would need to prove himself if he wanted to eventually take over Thornton Industries. "You'll start in the mailroom," Robert told him at a company meeting I attended as Robert's wife. "You'll work your way up like everyone else. No special treatment. No executive position just because you're my son. Show me you can actually contribute something, and we'll talk about your future in this company." Marcus's face turned purple with rage. "You can't do this. I'm your son. I'm supposed to inherit—" "You'll inherit what you earn," Robert said coldly, but say. "And so far, you've earned nothing. You graduated college with a C average because I made donations to keep you enrolled. You've never held a job for more than 6 months. You've coasted on the family name your entire life. That ends now. You want a position in my company? Prove you deserve it." Victoria's eyes had gone very wide during this exchange. I watched her calculate, watched her realize that Marcus wasn't the golden ticket she'd thought he was. She broke up with him 3 weeks later, citing different life goals. Word got around that she'd been seen with a senior executive at a competing firm. Marcus spiraled. Without his trust fund, Robert had frozen that too, with the same conditions as Caroline's, and without Victoria, he had nothing. He tried to trade on the Thornton name, but Robert had quietly let it be known in business circles that Marcus didn't speak for the company and had no authority. He ended up having to move back in with Eleanor, both of them bitter and broke in her small apartment, blaming each other for their downfall. Meanwhile, Robert and I thrived. I finished my degree in literature and started working with Robert's Foundation, establishing scholarship programs and literacy initiatives. Robert scaled back his hours at the company, finally allowing himself to enjoy life instead of working himself to death to support his ungrateful family. We traveled to Italy, to Japan, to Greece, places he'd always wanted to visit but had never taken time for. We were happy. Genuinely, overwhelmingly happy. One evening, about a year after our wedding, we were having dinner at an upscale restaurant when Marcus appeared at our table. He looked terrible, thin, unshaven, his expensive clothes now rumpled and dated. "Dad," he said, his voice cracking. "Please, I just need a loan. Just enough to get back on my feet. I'll pay you back, I swear." "No," Robert said calmly, not even looking up from his wine. "Dad, please, I'm your son." "You're a 30-year-old man who's never taken responsibility for anything in his life," Robert said. "I gave you every advantage. The best schools, the best opportunities, a family business ready-made for you, and you squandered it all because you couldn't be bothered to work for anything, because you thought the world owed you success just for existing." "I made mistakes," Marcus said desperately. "I know that, but please." "You didn't make mistakes," Robert cut him off. "You made choices. You chose to treat Elena like garbage. You chose to humiliate her in front of everyone. You chose Victoria over a woman who would have loved you loyally for the rest of your life. You chose to be cruel and careless and entitled. Those weren't mistakes, Marcus. That's who you are." "Because of her," Marcus pointed at me. "She poisoned you against your own family." "She saved me from my family," Robert corrected. "She showed me that I didn't have to spend my life being used and unappreciated, that I deserved better. And she was right." He finally looked at Marcus. "You want to know the truth, son? I'm happier now than I've been in 30 years. Elena didn't ruin my life. She gave me a life worth living. And if you can't see that, if you can't be happy that your father finally found some joy after decades of misery, then you're even more lost than I thought." Marcus's face crumpled. "You chose her over me." "No," I said quietly, speaking for the first time. "You chose yourself over everyone else. You chose Victoria over me when I loved you. You chose your ego over your relationship with your father. You chose the easy path over the right one every single time. And now you're upset that choices have consequences." I reached over and took Robert's hand. We didn't destroy your life, Marcus. We just stopped letting you destroy ours. Security escorted him out after that. I never saw him again. 2 years after our wedding, I graduated with honors and published my first novel, a story about second chances and choosing yourself over other people's expectations. It became a bestseller. Robert threw me a massive launch party, inviting everyone who'd ever doubted me, everyone who'd sneered at our marriage, everyone who'd called me a gold digger. Eleanor showed up uninvited, probably hoping to cause a scene. Instead, she found herself confronted by a room full of people who'd once been her peers, now celebrating my success. I watched her face as she realized how completely her world had shifted. These women who'd once followed her lead now surrounded me, congratulating me, asking for book recommendations, treating me like one of their own. Caroline tried to approach Robert, probably to beg for money. He handed her a copy of my book and said, "If you want to rebuild your life, start by reading this. Learn something about work ethic and perseverance." She left in tears, but the best moment came near the end of the evening when Robert pulled me onto the small dance floor as the band played. He held me close, swaying gently to the music, and whispered in my ear, "I want you to know something. Every single day, I wake up grateful that Marcus was stupid enough to let you go. His loss gave me the greatest gift of my life." "You gave me a gift too," I whispered back. "You gave me a real love. The kind that doesn't keep score or play games. The kind that makes you want to be better, not smaller. Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible to everyone else." "You were never invisible to me," he said. "From the very first moment, you were all I could see." We kissed then in front of everyone, and I didn't care who was watching or what they thought. This was my life now, my choice, my happiness. Later that night, in our penthouse overlooking the city, Robert gave me a gift, a set of antique keys. "What are these?" I asked. "The keys to the Thornton Manor," he said. "The estate's been in my family for 4 generations. Eleanor wanted it in the divorce, but it was in a family trust that only I could access. I could have sold it, used the money for something practical, but I thought," he smiled, "I thought maybe we could restore it, make it ours, fill it with actual happiness instead of decades of cold, miserable dinners. Maybe even fill it with children someday if you want." Children. We talked about it in abstract terms, but hearing him say it now made it real. A family. A real family. Built on love instead of obligation. "I want that," I told him. "I want all of it. With you." We started renovations the next month. We gutted the cold, formal spaces and created warmth. A massive library with floor-to-ceiling windows, a music room with a grand piano, a solarium filled with plants and light. We erased every trace of Eleanor's cold aesthetic and made the house into a home. And then, on a sunny afternoon in May, I told Robert I was pregnant. He cried, actually cried, this strong, stoic man, tears streaming down his face as he held me and thanked me over and over. "I never thought I'd get this," he whispered. "A real marriage, a wife who loves me, a child born from love, instead of obligation. Elena, you've given me everything." "You've given me everything too," I told him. "You've given me a life I actually want to live. You've given me respect and partnership and love. You've given me proof that good men exist, that real love is possible. You've given me a second chance." Our daughter was born 9 months later, healthy and perfect. We named her Grace because that's what she was, pure grace, unearned but treasured. Eleanor sent a gift for the baby with a note that said simply, "I hope you'll let me meet her someday." Robert read it, then put it aside. "Maybe," he said. "When she's older. If Eleanor can prove she's changed. But Grace will never be a pawn in family drama. She'll never be made to feel less than. She'll know she's loved and wanted every single day of her life." "She will," I agreed, watching him hold our daughter with such tenderness. "Because she has you as a father." 5 years later, our family was complete. Grace had a little brother named Henry, and we just found out I was pregnant with twins. The Thornton Manor was alive with noise and laughter and love. Robert had semi-retired, spending most of his time with us and on his philanthropic work. I'd published 3 more novels, each one more successful than the last. And Marcus? The last I heard, he was managing a car rental franchise in Arizona, having finally accepted that he needed to build his own life instead of coasting on his father's name. Word was that he'd met someone, a woman who didn't care about wealth or status, who actually liked him for himself. I hoped it was true. I hoped he'd finally learned something about real love versus entitlement. Caroline had moved to Portland, where she was apparently doing better, working at an independent bookstore and dating the owner. She'd sent me a message on social media a few months back, a simple, "I'm sorry for how I treated you. You were right about everything." I'd responded with, "I hope you're happy," and meant it. Eleanor had moved to Florida, where she lived modestly on her divorce settlement. She sent birthday cards to the children, but never asked to visit. Robert said that was probably for the best. As for Victoria, she'd married that executive she'd left Marcus for, then divorced him 2 years later in a scandalous trial involving accusations of fraud. Last I saw, she was working as a personal stylist and trying to rebuild her reputation. I felt nothing when I saw her photos online. Not anger, not satisfaction, nothing. She was irrelevant to my life. On the night of our 7th wedding anniversary, Robert and I sat on the terrace of the manor, watching our children play in the garden below. Grace was teaching Henry how to do cartwheels, both of them giggling when they fell over. "Do you ever regret it?" Robert asked quietly. "Giving up the life you could have had? You could have married someone your own age, had a more traditional path." "Stop," I said, firmly turning to face him. "Robert, you're the love of my life. You gave me everything I actually wanted: respect, partnership, real love, a family built on choice instead of obligation. I don't care that you're older than me. I don't care what society thinks. I care that when I wake up, you're the first person I want to see. I care that you know my coffee order and my favorite books and exactly how to make me laugh when I'm stressed. I care that you're an incredible father to our children. I care that you still look at me like I'm the most amazing thing you've ever seen, even when I'm covered in baby spit up and haven't slept in days." "You are the most amazing thing I've ever seen," he said seriously. "And you are the best decision I ever made," I told him. Choosing you, choosing us, was choosing happiness, real, lasting happiness. Why would I ever regret that? He pulled me close and kissed me, slow and sweet. "I love you," he whispered. "I will love you until the day I die, and probably long after that." "I love you too," I said. "In this life and every life to come." Later, when the children were asleep and we were lying in bed together, I thought about my first life. About the pain and the heartbreak and the loneliness. About dying in despair, thinking I'd failed at everything. But that life had led me here, to this moment, to this man, to this family. And I realized something profound. Sometimes what feels like the worst thing that can happen to you is actually the universe clearing the path for the best thing. Marcus choosing Victoria had felt like the end of my world, but it had actually been the beginning of my real life. "Thank you," I whispered into the darkness. Robert stirred beside me. "For what?" "For loving me when I was too blind to see it. For waiting. For being brave enough to divorce Eleanor and risk everything. For giving me this life." "You gave me this life," he corrected. "You were brave enough to choose it. To choose me. Even knowing what it would cost. You're the bravest person I know, Elena." "We're brave together," I said. "Always," he agreed, pulling me closer. And as I drifted off to sleep, safe and loved and happy, I sent a silent thank you to my past self. To the woman who'd suffered so much, who'd died thinking she'd wasted her life. "You didn't waste anything," I thought. "You learned, and you gave me the wisdom to choose better." Marcus had chosen Victoria over me twice, once in each life. But I'd chosen something better than revenge. I'd chosen real love, I'd chosen myself, I'd chosen Robert, And that choice had given me everything I'd ever truly wanted: a partner who cherished me, children who were loved, a life that was genuinely worth living. They say living well is the best revenge. They're right. I had everything now: love, family, success, happiness. Meanwhile, Marcus had learned far too late that when you treat people as disposable, you end up disposed of yourself. That when you chase shallow attractions instead of deep connection, you end up shallow and alone. On my 35th birthday, we threw a party at the manor. Hundreds of people came: friends, colleagues, family, all the people who mattered in my new life. My parents were there, proudly telling anyone who'd listen about my books and my charity work. Robert's business partners congratulated us on another successful year. My publisher was negotiating a TV deal for my novels, and in the middle of it all, Robert pulled me aside to a quiet corner. "I have something for you," he said, handing me a small box. Inside was a necklace, a delicate golden pendant in the shape of a key. "It's the key to my heart," he said, and even though it was cheesy, coming from him, it was perfect. "Though you've had that since the moment we met. But it's also," he smiled, "it's the key to the new Thornton Industries Scholarship Program, the Elena Thornton Foundation for Young Writers. Full-ride scholarships for students from underprivileged backgrounds who want to pursue creative writing. Your name, your legacy, helping other young people find their voices." I stared at the pendant, overwhelmed. "Robert, you've given me so much," he said softly. "The least I can do is make sure your impact on this world extends far beyond just us. You changed my life, Elena. Now let's change some other lives too." I kissed him then, not caring that we had a party to host, not caring that people were probably looking for us. All that mattered was this man, this moment, this life we'd built together. When we finally rejoined the party, Grace ran up to us, Henry toddling behind her. "Mama, Daddy, come play with us." "We're coming, sweetheart," I said, taking her hand. Robert scooped up Henry and we walked back to the party together, a family complete and whole and happy. And somewhere in Arizona, I imagined Marcus reading about the Elena Thornton Foundation in some business journal, finally understanding what he'd lost. Not just me, but the chance to be part of something real, something lasting, something that mattered. But that was his burden to carry, not mine. I'd carried enough burdens in my first life. In this one, I was choosing joy. Every single day, I chose joy. Every single day, I chose Robert. Every single day, I chose us. And I would keep choosing it, this beautiful, imperfect, wonderfully real life, until the very end. Because this time, I'd gotten it right. This time, I'd chosen love, real love, the kind that lasts.